Welcome to Annunciation Radio's Faith with Reasons, the program that examines what the Church teaches and why. Faith with Reasons.
Well, good afternoon and welcome to Faith with Reasons, show number 460. I'm Ron Finn along with Shayne Stanfield here in the studios of Annunciation Radio. Shayne, how are you?
I'm doing pretty good. How about yourself?
Pretty good. Looking forward to a great show today.
Yeah, absolutely.
We've got a little bit of a thunderstorm activity here and there, but, it feels good.
I think isn't the rain pretty much over with, or are we expecting some more?
Well, when you least expect it, it'll rear its ugly head once again.
Yeah. I heard you guys got some rain here at the station this morning.
Well, there was a 40% chance of rain this morning.
Yeah, I think you got all 40%.
Yes, we did. 40% of us got wet. And let's see, on this wonderful day today, we have a lot to look forward to as we welcome back to the program after a long time. Father Dwight Longenecker is going to be joining us. And I'll tell you, this is a wonderful book that we're going to be talking about, and we're going to talk about a lot of other endeavors as well, but he tells his epic spiritual journey to Catholicism from the Anglican Church. And I know we don't really run into too many married priests out there. Mm-hmm. I think there's like 120 of them in the church. That's quite a I should say very few compared to how many priests are throughout the world. Yeah, so, absolutely. Yeah. So looking forward to hearing his story. This book that he has out is called There and Back Again, A Somewhat Religious Odyssey. I love the title. And it is a very easy read, a very fun read. And it's available from Ignatius Press, available at your favorite Catholic bookstore, online at ignatius.com and at dwightlongenecker.com. And we want to talk a little bit about his website as well and some of the other things that are available there. But Father, let me welcome you to the program, Father Dwight Longenecker, here on Faith with Reasons. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for the invitation. Good to hear from you again.
And you are in South Carolina, correct?
Yes, Greeneville, South Carolina.
Ah, beautiful country there.
Yeah, it's a wonderful state. We got the best of beaches, the best of mountains, and everything in between.
Very
Can't
good.
Go wrong, yeah.
And some good southern cooking.
Now, see, you should have invited us to your place to do the show.
Oh, yeah.
That's what it sounds like to me. But it's great to be able to connect with you once again and just to let the audience know a little bit more about you. I think many in the audience are familiar with you. They've been following you. But raised in an evangelical Protestant home, Dwight Longenecker attended the fundamentalist Bob Jones University and then on to Oxford University studying theology. He was ordained an Anglican minister and in 1995 received into the Catholic Church. And he returned to the United States to be ordained a Catholic priest. So Father Dwight Longenecker now serves as pastor of Our Lady of the Rosary Catholic Church in Greeneville, South Carolina, author of numerous books and a very popular Catholic speaker and blogger, and you put a lot of material out there to engage people in the faith. So thank you for what you do. And how's everything going so far?
It's going really well. As you said, I'm a pastor of a Catholic parish, Our Lady of the Rosary in Greeneville. We some years ago built a beautiful new church. Now our school is thriving, and we have an aim to build a beautiful new school. We've added grades 9 to 12 with the classical curriculum. And the school has a waiting list in most classes, so wow. We're really pleased the Lord's blessed us in such a wonderful way.
That is really good news.
And it's high school only. You don't have K through. It's not K through 12. It's just did you say 9th grade through 12th grade?
It was K through 8, and we added grades 9 to 12. But it's not a typical American high school with Friday night football and big classes and all the rest. It's small. It's family centered. It's parish centered. Classical education with classical education curriculum. And so we don't have any more than sort of 20 or 25 students in each year group. So we keep it small, keep it family-oriented, and avoid a lot of problems that way.
Sure.
And, I'm not surprised that you would have a waiting list then because that's such a great alternative to really just about anything out there. So I'm sure people are clamoring to get in.
Yeah, and with my experience in the American high school experience, as soon as it's kind of crazy to take, kids at such a vulnerable age and really isolate them from their family and from the rest of society and put them in with all their peers, with all those hormones raging and all those crises that adolescents are going through. And by keeping it small and family-centered, we can focus more on the kids and their joys and their struggles, but within a family context. I mean, it's great to see 11th and 12th graders at school, at the school mass, for instance, and in school every day with their younger siblings. We have lots of large families, and that's a joy to see.
What a great opportunity for families to get the full education there at one location. So many schools are split K through 8, and then you go off someplace else and do the high school.
One of the other things we've done, which has been a big success, which is kind of counterintuitive, is we have something called the Faithful Family Scholarship, where parents pay tuition for the 2 oldest kids and all the rest come free.
Wow.
So we've had lots of big families move to Greeneville to take advantage of this great opportunity, because we believe the Catholic Church can only ask their families to be faithful and accept the children that God gives them if we also make it possible for them to be educated in a good Catholic education.
Oh,
so
wonderful.
We're doing that in our parish, and it's been really terrific for our whole school ethos and our parish ethos.
Yeah, that sounds like a great model for other parochial schools, too.
Yeah, it takes a risk. You have to take a risk to do that, but we found that it actually works, and it's been great for all of us.
Yeah, holding your breath that first couple of years, right?
Yep.
Very good. Well, Father, let's begin. First of all, the book is a wonderful title. There and Back Again: A Somewhat Religious Odyssey. And I love what Marcus Grodi, who had been hosting, of course, the Journey Home before his son took it over. I love what he said in the introduction of the book. Father Dwight has written one of the most comedic conversion stories I've ever read. His thoroughly enjoyable autobiography is a rollicking read, best read wearing a smoking jacket with pipe and scotch in hand. I can just hear Marcus Grodi saying that.
Yeah, when I approached this project, I'd read a lot of conversion stories, and they're terrific. But, a lot of them are heavy on the apologetics, heavy on the theology, which is good. But I thought, well, other people have already done that. I'm just going to tell my story, my autobiography, and how God's worked in my life. And a lot of the adventures that I've had in the world of religion have actually had a pretty funny side to them. So I tried to bring that out, make it an entertaining story as well as an informative, inspiring story.
So let's just basically start from the beginning here. You obviously were raised evangelical Protestant. What did that look like? Was it more or less like obviously maybe non-denominational?
Yeah, we were brought up in what was called an independent fundamental church. Okay. In other words, it was a basically Baptist in theology, but it was independent, it was congregational, therefore it wasn't part of any denomination. It was founded by a group of lay people who got together and were having Bible studies, and then they called a young man to come and be their preacher. They eventually bought some land, and they basically did church on their own and just built this church, and it was successful. Lots of young families started to go there, and we were part of that. The pastor had come from Bob Jones University, so it was kind of in the orbit of Bob Jones University, but it was a non-denominational church.
Interesting. And it sounds like your family was pretty involved in the church, in church life.
Yeah, absolutely. My dad was what's called the senior deacon, so like the senior layman in the church, and very supportive, and we were very much involved in the church. Twice on Sunday and Wednesday evenings, we'd all troop off to church together.
And obviously, you felt inspired and called, perhaps, to learn more, to get more involved, and to learn more about the faith, and enrolled at Bob Jones University, and then on to Oxford, and that led you to Anglicanism.
Yeah, it was while I was at Bob Jones University that I got afflicted with an illness called Anglophilia, the love of all things English. I've been reading T.S. Eliot and C.S. Lewis and J.R. Tolkien and all those guys, and asked myself, well, what kind of Christians were they? They obviously were not Baptist, Southern Baptist. I discovered they were Anglican, Church of England. So I'd visited England and Europe a couple of times, and then discovered that we were the little Anglican church there in Greeneville, South Carolina. So I became an Anglican there, and that then opened up for me to want to go to England to actually be ordained as a priest in the Church of England.
So I know a lot of people refer to the Anglican Church as Catholic Light. It's very it looks very Catholic from the outside. Was there something about your upbringing? At some point, you must have recognized that there was more of the faith in the Anglican Church. Is that what the draw was initially?
Yeah, I was attracted to the literary qualities of the Anglican religion, and also the culture of England, the history of England, and realized that my faith was going in a direction of wanting to get away from the kind of individualistic, independent, entrepreneurial Protestantism of America, and wanted something deeper and more ancient and older. And Anglicanism was the obvious step in that direction.
And I think most people that are exposed to the Anglican faith have done so through, King Charles being his coronation. People watching that, Princess Diana and Princess Charles' wedding. Whenever the royal family is, involved in anything, it usually involves that huge, beautiful cathedral, and you see all the ritual and the dress and everything, and the pomp and the circumstance. So I think a lot of people are confused in terms of how the difference between Anglican and Catholicism is. They look at that, and that's the church. What did you learn, I guess, as an Anglican minister about the Catholic Church that made you curious about Catholicism?
Well, remember, within the evangelical world and the fundamentalist world, there is a pretty heavy strain of anti-Catholicism. And that anti-Catholic sort of bias remains there within the Anglican Church as well. Now, in the Anglican Church, it takes on a much more polite sort of complexion, but it's still very anti-Catholic. So there was an anti-Catholic bias within the Anglican Church. However, there was also an appreciation of Catholic liturgy, Catholic tradition, and Catholic ways of worship and Catholic spirituality. And I was opening up to that, as well as had a Catholic friend who I met at Bob Jones, ironically, who then introduced me to Benedictine spirituality, and I would go to Catholic Benedictine monasteries on retreat. And so I was more and more moving within the Anglican Church to a much more Catholic position and appreciation of Catholicism, so that eventually I got to the point where I would say, well, I'm a Catholic, I'm just not a Roman Catholic. I'm Catholic within the Anglican Church. I realize now what how inconsistent that is, but at the time it seemed to make sense and it seemed to fit.
So what kind of time frame are we looking at here? Did you complete your degree at Bob Jones before you looked at studying abroad?
I'm sorry. Could you ask that question again? I'm losing you a little bit.
Yeah. As far as the time frame is concerned, what kind of time frame did you complete your studies at Bob Jones and then move on to studies in England, or did you just drop what you were involved with at Bob Jones? And
I finished my degree at Bob Jones in speech and English.
Okay.
And then I taught English for a year in a little Christian school in Pennsylvania, and applied to different seminaries in England, having this idea that I wanted to go to England, be an Anglican priest, and eventually be the pastor of a beautiful ancient Anglican church in a beautiful village. You know, the kind of things you see when you watch some of those English murder mysteries on TV.
It sounds very romantic.
Yeah. And so basically I went to Oxford to do my graduate work.
Okay.
And that was at a seminary, an Anglican seminary in Oxford called Wycliffe Hall, which was part of the evangelical or more Protestant wing of the Anglican Church. And so again, coming from a Protestant fundamentalist background, an evangelical background, that was a good stepping stone into Anglicanism because it felt safe, it was more Protestant in its theology and evangelical in its understanding. And so that was a good stepping stone for me into Anglicanism.
So how accepted was this with your family?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
How accepted was this move to Anglicanism, with your family?
I'm sorry, there's a bad connection here. Could you just repeat that again for me?
How did your family take the news that you were jumping to Anglican?
Yeah, how did my family respond? Well, they were actually really good. My parents were very, as we've discussed, very committed Christians, and they loved me and they trusted me, and they basically said, "We don't understand where the Lord is leading you into this Anglican church, which seemed very strange, or why you want to live in England. But we trust that the Lord is leading you, and you're following the Lord's leading, so we support you."
Yeah, it sounds like a very faith-based family that allowed you to explore your faith and really discover yourself, and they were very supportive of you, which I think is obviously quite a blessing, and also a good lesson for parents really everywhere to really walk with their children, and their adult children especially. And
this is what I've actually said in counseling parents with teens and with young adults. You have to let them explore the faith. You have to let them find the faith themselves. If you don't, it won't be real for them. It's kind of like riding a bike. You can show them how to ride a bike. You can be an example for riding a bike, but they have to get on and ride the bike.
Oh, very practical. Very, very practical.
Yeah, and if they don't do it for themselves, it's never going to be real for them. They can't just do it out of a sense of duty. That sense of duty is fine, but they also have to have that encounter with Christ, that encounter with the faith, which makes it real for them.
Yeah, and obviously families that can nurture that in their growing children stand a better chance of keeping them engaged in the faith, whatever form that faith takes them, as opposed to just abandoning it, as so many do. Our guest on Faith with Reasons, Father Dwight Longenecker, whose book There and Back Again, A Somewhat Religious Odyssey, is now available from Ignatius Press. I'm Ron Finn, along with Shayne Stanfield. And in that book, I want to focus a little bit on the subtitle, A Somewhat Religious Odyssey. Can you take us into some of those highlights in the book where you might underscore a somewhat religious odyssey?
Yeah, the book is more of an autobiography than just a conversion story. So while the faith is obviously playing a very important theme in my life, there's a lot of travel that's in there, because I travel from over to England. I discuss Oxford and Cambridge. I did a pilgrimage from England to Jerusalem, across France and Italy. So it's a bit of a travel book, an autobiography, and a conversion story all rolled up in one. So that's why I used the word Odyssey, because it was a great journey. And it is more than somewhat religious, so the somewhat religious is perhaps a bit of a sly understatement for the whole thing. Mm-hmm. That's all.
Very good. So you began at Oxford with the intention of becoming an Anglican minister. What's that formation process like?
Well, they expect you to do 3 years of theological study at an approved what they call a theological college. We would call it a seminary. Mm-hmm. And after that, as part of that process, you have to go to what they call a selection conference, basically a personnel weekend where they would you'd have a series of interviews and be recommended for this training or not. So I went over there sort of freelance on my own without having gone to a selection conference. But eventually I found a bishop who sponsored me for a selection conference and then was approved to go forward for ordination. So that's the whole process that you have to go through. And then, like in the Catholic Church, you would after you're approved for ordination, you pass your 3 years exams, then you would go on to serve a year as a deacon, and then after that, be ordained as a priest.
Wonderful. Now, there was a period of time that you spent as an Anglican minister before you started considering Catholicism. About how long of a time frame was that, and what exactly happened?
Well, the process into the Catholic Church was actually a 20-year process.
Oh,
it began with meeting a really sincere, devout Catholic while I was at Bob Jones. Then I moved into Anglicanism, and during my time in Anglicanism, I was moving in a more Catholic direction. I was appreciating Catholic worship within the Anglican Church. As I said, I was going to Catholic Benedictine monasteries for my retreat. I was learning more about Catholic spirituality, learning to pray the Rosary, Eventually, after I was an Anglican priest, I made a pilgrimage to Medjugorje, for instance.
Mm-hmm.
I had more Catholic friends and was therefore moving in a much more Catholic direction over this 20-year period until I was finally realized that this is a step we had to take to actually become Catholic and to leave the Anglican Church.
So during this 20-year period, you realized that you were borrowing from the Catholic faith, or you had realized that a lot of the Anglicans had preserved, like you said, the Catholic liturgies and whatnot. So the Catholicism wasn't necessarily strange to you. You were raised partially within the church teaching, correct?
Yeah, within the Anglican Church, I was appreciating things in a very Catholic way.
Mm-hmm.
I was celebrating the Anglican liturgy in a Catholic way. I was appreciating Catholic spirituality and Catholic writers, especially the pre-Reformation Catholic history in England. Appreciating the Catholic architecture, which was retained in the Anglican Church.
Yeah.
The musical tradition, and so many of these things which we, of course, in the Anglican Church had inherited from the Catholic Church.
Mm-hmm.
So if I went back to the Anglican Church to be sort of immersed more in history, once I got into the Anglican Church in England, it was obvious that the Catholic Church was the even deeper history within England.
Yeah. And it was just because there was still an underlying anti-Catholicism within Anglicanism that really kept you from making that official.
Yeah, because we were told, a lot of us believed it was possible to be a Catholic within the Anglican Church. We just weren't Roman Catholic. We were Anglican Catholics. Of course, that's inconsistent and can't really hold up to scrutiny, but that was the understanding that we had. In other words, it's okay to do things in a nice Catholic way, but you don't have to actually be Roman Catholic and submit to the Pope and all the rest of that stuff. Mm-hmm. So that's the kind of fantasy idea of Catholicism we held to in the Anglican Church.
Gotcha.
But eventually, it was the Church of England's decision to ordain women as priests, which made me re-examine the deeper questions.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure. And, of course, somewhere along the way, in your odyssey, you met and married your wife.
Yes, that's right. It's possible for Anglican ministers to be married. So after about 5 years, more like 10 years as an Anglican priest, we met and got married. And so I was, by the time we came into the Catholic Church, we were married with 2 young children.
And the whole family came into the church with you?
Yes.
And along with about 800 other Anglican ministers. So that was a pretty momentous decision that the Anglican Church made to decide to ordain women. So obviously that was a turning point for many.
Yeah, and it kind of blindsided the Anglican hierarchy, because at one point in the debate, people were saying, we're going to lose a lot of people to the Catholics. And somebody came up with some sort of a poll they took and said, we've done a study on this. We think only about 15 men are going to leave. In the end, it was about 800 men who left.
Wow.
That was a miscalculation.
Yeah. 800 priests in the Church of England and many more lay people.
Mm. Yeah, that's right. That would be just priests, wouldn't it? Yeah, the 800. Wow. Yeah. Quite an impact. Yeah,
considering that there were about 7,000 or 8,000 Anglican priests, about 10% of their clergy left to become Catholics.
So was this something that was a long time in the making? Was the Anglican Church toying with the idea of ordaining women, or was it pretty much like what we see today? We're at such a very, very fast paced with cultural change. Did it hit the Catholic or the Anglican Church rather quickly that they needed to catch up with the times?
No, this has been going on for about 40 or 50 years in the Anglican Church. C.S. Lewis wrote an essay about women priests back in the 1940s or early 1950s. Mm-hmm. And by the time they actually took the decision, it was the early 1990s. So, yeah, they had been discussing it for 40 or 50 years in the Anglican Church and debating it back and forth. And,
of course, it wasn't received well. As you pointed out, 800 priests ended up leaving. I mean, that was it seems like it took a big chunk out of the church, because there were a lot of people that believed that this shouldn't be.
Yeah. The winners in that debate never really recognized this or acknowledged this. It was basically good riddance to you guys.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there was a lot of bad feeling.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. And then, of course, you're a married man. You're an Anglican priest, and then you decide really to jump in with both feet into Catholicism. And then, how did that affect family life? How did that affect your wife and your kids?
Well, we had to leave our nice home in the country, a nice vicarage house, and my job and my career and what I'd always wanted to do, because by this time I'd actually achieved my dream of being a pastor of a couple of beautiful old 1,000-year-old churches in a nice old village on the Isle of Wight. And so I'd kind of got where I wanted to be. But we had to toss all of that on one side, and I had to retrain for a new career. I had to support my family. I didn't have any visible means of income and support, so it was back to the drawing board.
And that's pretty much a common. I would not. I don't want to say it's a problem. I think it's a wonderful thing. But somebody is faced with the difficulty of losing their job when you could be a minister at an evangelical church, non-denominational big box church, and you decide to become Catholic. You're giving up your career.
Yeah, your career, your livelihood. Also, of course, as a minister, what you do is much more part of your identity than if you have a sort of ordinary 9-to-5 job. And so you go through a kind of identity crisis, not really knowing who you are and what you're supposed to be doing with your life.
And I'm curious, when you did come in, being welcomed into the church, into the Catholic Church, the kind of support that you found there. I know we're coming up on break here, so I know we probably won't have time to get into the whole thing, but if that's the case, we'll come back at the end of the break. But did you feel welcomed right away? Was there support available for you? Did they help you figure out how to, for example, earn a living and so forth and support your family?
I would like to say that it was a warm welcome. Unfortunately, the English Catholics were finding it difficult to cope with all of these converts from Anglicanism, and someone who was not only a convert from Anglicanism, but was a rather eccentric, came from a rather unusual American background of an evangelical Protestant fundamentalism, was even more of a wild card. And so they didn't really know what to do with us.
Yeah.
Now, all the while, well, I guess we'll pick up my question on the next half.
Although we do enjoy asking very detailed questions and then saying, well, we've only got 10 seconds to break, and then try to see if we can wrap it in. All right, we'll take a little break, and we will come right back. Father Dwight Longenecker is our guest on Faith with Reasons here on Annunciation Radio. Thank you for joining us. Stick around. Much more to get into on There and Back Again, a somewhat religious odyssey, in just a few minutes. RCIA, the Rite of Christian Initiation of Adults, is a journey of faith. If you're interested in joining the Catholic Church, want to learn more about the faith, if you've missed receiving a sacrament as a child, baptism, reconciliation, Eucharist, or confirmation, or if you've been away from the church and you would like to ask questions about the church today, RCIA is for you. If you or anyone you know is interested, please contact your parish office and ask about RCIA.
St. Alphonsus Liguori made a vow to never waste time. He was a bishop, he oversaw a religious community, and he served people in need. He wrote about 60 books, and he'd write those books in little half-hour increments when he had the free time to do it. But for all his busyness, he would drop everything if someone needed to talk to him. And not just people who were a big deal, but anybody. And he'd have no problem spending an hour or two with somebody who just came by and needed his help. You see, he never saw wasting time on people as a waste of time. What a beautiful thing. I'm a really driven guy. I'm always going to the next task, the next project. I need to remember to stop. If somebody comes to my door, if a kid wants to talk to me, if a friend wants to chat, people come first. That's how Jesus did things. He didn't just preach to large crowds. He always had the time for the one, just like he does for you. Do you make that kind of time for people? This is Chris Stefanik from Real Life Catholic.
Courage, an apostolate of the Catholic Church, ministers to persons with same-sex attractions and their loved ones. They also have an outreach called Encourage, which ministers to relatives, spouses, and friends of persons with same-sex attractions. Endorsed by the Pontifical Council for the Family, our beloved John Paul II said of this ministry, "Courage is doing the work of God." Please visit the Courage website, couragerc.org, to learn more and find a Courage chapter near you.
Now, back to Faith with Reasons, here on Annunciation Radio.
Hey, welcome back here. Shayne Stanfield with Ron Finn. Today we're blessed to have Father Dwight Longenecker, who was raised in an evangelical Protestant home. He attended the fundamentalist Bob Jones University and then studied theology at Oxford University, was ordained an Anglican minister. In 1985, he was received into the Catholic Church and returned to the United States to be ordained a Catholic priest. And speaking of that, there's only about 120 married Catholic priests. Father Dwight Longenecker now serves as pastor of Our Lady of the Rosary Catholic Church in Greeneville, South Carolina, and we are discussing somewhat of an autobiography, his newest book, There and Back Again, A Somewhat Religious Odyssey. So in the last half hour, we pretty much got to the point where he had become Catholic, and given up a career as an Anglican minister, approximately 20 years worth of time spent as being a minister in the Anglican Church, and he found himself without a job. And I suppose we can pick it up there, Father. So you had to find a means of income. You're now Catholic. What did you do to support your family? Was it religious related, or did you use some of your previous skills to maybe go back into teaching or something in the interim?
Well, I had done a degree in English and speech and got very interested in film, and so I decided to try to train as a scriptwriter for movies.
Yeah.
And I went and did some training and got some background, did some extra reading, and got a job in a little video production company. And that only lasted about 2 or 3 years before the company went belly up. I then was offered a job with a Catholic charity, which raised money and helped to support convert clergy. So I began working for them, going to different parishes every weekend to speak about our work and raise money. And then for the rest of my time, I started doing my freelance writing. So that sort of all came together, and that's when I began writing some books, writing some articles, and so forth.
So there was a desire, as I read here just a little bit, to return to the United States. And was this to become a Catholic priest, or was a decision made that you needed to get back to the United States, and then the decision was made? How did that work out?
Well, all of this is explained in the book, which we don't want to talk about too much on the radio.
That's right. You don't want to spoil it, right?
But basically, the short version is my application to be a Catholic priest in England never really came together because it bounced from one sort of diocese to another, and for all sorts of complicated reasons, it was kind of just put on the hold. And so one of the priests joked and said, "Well, they don't call Rome the Eternal City for nothing, Father." So, but eventually, by God's providence, the door opened for us to return to the U.S., to South Carolina, where I was then ordained in 2006 in the Diocese of Charleston.
Okay, so the was the application to become a priest, was that something that happened pretty quick, or while you were exploring other careers, or was this something that came up towards the end?
No, most of the priests who came in from the Anglican Church applied pretty immediately to the Catholic Church to be ordained as Catholic priests. Mm-hmm. The men who were celibate, of course, were moved through quite quickly. Those of us who were married had to have individual dossiers put together on a case-by-case basis and have our paperwork submitted to Rome so that we would be granted a dispensation from the vow of celibacy. Mm. And this pastoral provision had first been set up for Episcopalians in the USA, and then the Pope Benedict opened up the same provision in the Anglican Church in England, and now it's available all across the English-speaking world.
Well, very good, and I'm sure the Catholic Church may have been blindsided by this because you've got this instant flood of 800 Anglican priests that want to become, Catholic priests. So the Church had to do something about it.
Yeah, and all of us came in with a whole range of different, our own unique stories, because some of us, like me, were coming from the evangelical background and needed a fair bit of extra training in Catholic theology and sacramental theology and so forth. Some of the other men, most of the other men were coming in from the Anglo-Catholic wing of the Anglican Church and were much more educated in Catholic theology and so forth. And so each one of us had to be considered on a case-by-case basis.
And part of that consideration, then, I guess this would be the approval of your application. The church would then decide what kind of studies that you would need to complete before you're finally ordained. How does that work?
Yeah, on a case-by-case basis. Mm-hmm. Some of the dioceses over in England had set up weekend courses for all the men who needed to be retrained, and we would have a weekend course with various professors of Catholic theology professors come in and give us lectures and so forth. My own, I went through one of those courses. Then when I came back to the U.S., I sat down with the bishop and said, look, I think I need some extra work in this subject and that subject and this subject. And so he assigned a mentor for me to guide me through the reading for this process. And that was Father James Parker, the first of the married Episcopalians in the U.S. to be ordained, who just happened to be in the same diocese here in Charleston. So
really?
He walked me through the. He and his wife had accumulated a theological library specifically for those of us men who were coming in from the Anglican tradition. So I did some extra reading, and then had to go to New Jersey to the seminary where I took the theological ordination exam, like any seminarian would have to do before being ordained.
Wonderful. Now, just to clarify, when you were in England, it was your acceptance of the application in the United States that prompted you to move back to the United States?
Well, by the early 1980s, my family had moved from Pennsylvania to Greeneville, South Carolina, where my dad and my older brother started a business.
Okay.
And so Greeneville became my hometown in the U.S. And we were back visiting my family around the year 2000 and met Father J. Scott Newman, who was the Catholic priest in Greeneville. And I explained to him how for 5 years my application to be ordained as a priest in England had been delayed and delayed and delayed. And he said, well, as an American citizen, he said, but living in England, he said, but Greeneville is your hometown. The Bishop of Charleston is also your bishop. I said,
okay.
Oh, that's interesting. Mm-hmm. He said, and he's coming to dinner tomorrow night. Do you want to meet him? So that then led me to meet Bishop Robert Baker, who is now retired from, I think, Birmingham, Alabama diocese, but he was here at the time. And so he took me under his wing and brought me back from England for a meeting with the personnel board and then to move forward for ordination in this country.
Wow, that's wonderful.
So kind of cut through that red tape. Yeah, wonderful.
It's amazing how the Holy Spirit works, huh?
Yeah, but it was another 5 years waiting, though, because when I went back to England, the Cardinal Archbishop of Westminster said, oh, don't go to America, I'll ordain you here. And that began another whole 5-year waiting process. Well, I went to various meetings and various interviews and so forth, and delayed again until finally the proper job opening opened up in Greeneville, which allowed us to make the move back to South Carolina.
Ah, interesting. Yeah, that's you must have really been determined, obviously, and called, and weren't going to give up at that point. So
yeah, it
God
was
bless you for that.
It was a 10-year waiting period, but when it actually opened up, it all moved quite quickly. So that we moved here, we were approved, and the job opened up in 2005. We moved the family in the spring of 2006. And was ordained by that December. And I can remember when I was ordained, someone said to me, "You were obviously on a fast track." I said, "Well, he didn't know that he didn't know that it had been a 10-year process."
Wow.
Now the job opening, specifically, what was that? Because you said the job was open in 2005, and you were ordained in 2006.
Yeah, the Vatican says that the married men should be appointed to jobs like hospital chaplains and school chaplaincies and so forth, where there is a kind of external salary, and not to be assigned as pastors in parishes. so that they would be able to maintain their parish life with some distance from the ministry. So a job opened up to be chaplain in a Catholic high school in Greeneville. So I applied for that, and the Lord opened the door step by step for that to take place. Eventually, I was asked to go and be administrator of Our Lady of the Rosary Parish, and then 5 years after serving as administrator, the bishop appointed me as pastor. But that also required special permission from Rome.
Oh, sure. Yeah, I could see that. And, of course, as a pastor of a busy, really a whole parish, you've got that school and everything, obviously keeps you very busy there, and keeps really you're quite engaged in the parish, both as the administrator, but then especially as the pastor. You get not only the administrative duties, but the everything that goes along with that, and all the spiritual responsibilities as well. So I'm sure that keeps you pretty busy, Father.
It keeps me out of trouble, I hope.
Yes. Well, thankfully, you have made time to write. You've written over a dozen books out there on theology, and of course, I want to talk a little bit about your website too, because there's so much on there at DwightLongenecker.com, including you've got podcasts there, and you've got obviously people can take a look at your books and so forth. And if people go to that website, first of all, they notice what a handsome guy you are, but also the tremendous volume of work.
Yeah, I've written about 20 books now, I guess, and they're available on the website. As I say, I started writing after I had come into the Catholic Church, and one thing opened up into another. When we came back here to the States, I started this thing called a blog. They were new in 2006, and just to write things that I wanted to get to write, but I couldn't get published elsewhere, either because they were too whimsical or because they were not really appropriate for the different magazines and publications I was writing for. So, and then people began to read it. So I was amazed that before long I had this audience building up, and so I kept on writing, and it kept on growing. And that was a little sideline, which actually helped to get the word out there and share my story. And I realized how, I have to say it, how poorly catechized so many American Catholics were. And this, over the years, I began to realize that the Lord had given me a ministry to help to share the Catholic faith, not only with non-Catholics, but also with my fellow Catholics.
That's wonderful, and over the years I've seen you on so many featured on so many shows. But you not only do guest appearances from time to time, but you do travel and you do speaking arrangements. Do you not?
I have done in the past. I'm sort of steering away from that now. I had a stroke 2 years ago, and I'm slowing down a bit now.
Oh wow.
Well, you certainly have a terrific ability and gift for evangelization as you connect with so many people on so many different levels, and you never really know where someone is on their spiritual path, if they're even on one, and they come across you in some way, shape, or form, and then kind of get drawn in to learn more. So I can see what you mean, that you've been given a great gift, that you've been able to reach out and actually engage people in the faith in one way or another. I don't know if you hear back from a lot of these people, if you get a lot of feedback or not.
I don't get that much feedback, but with the feedback that I do get is wonderful. I mean, I had a note today in the mail from someone who's read There and Back Again, and she said, I grew up in a very similar home to yours, went to Bob Jones, went to Oxford, and said really connected with your story in lots of different ways. So when I get letters like that, it's very gratifying, and know that people are actually out there actually reading this stuff and benefiting from it.
Yeah, so glad that you finally have this in-print form, as a lot of folks have seen you, as Shayne mentioned, on various guest shots and so forth. And, of course, with Marcus Grodi and the Journey Home, if people, I'm sure people can still access that on the EWTN website, on the on-demand section, and find that. So it's just great to be able to present yourself as a terrific way, kind of an example of perseverance, number one, but also faithfulness. And people have got to wonder, what is so attractive about the Catholic faith that creates this kind of dedication and this kind of perseverance? So I think it gives people a lot of hope.
Yeah, I think that the thing which was a turning point for me, as I said, when the Church of England decided to ordain women as priests, that helped me to look at the bigger question, and that is the authority question in the Church. Basically, I'm conservative by nature and by upbringing, and so I was opposed to the idea of women's ordination because I'm fairly conservative. But I did try to listen to both sides of the story, and those who were in favor of women priests actually had some good arguments, some very good arguments in all sorts of ways, and that brought me, therefore, to what I call the Protestant problem. What do you do when good, sincere Christians sincerely disagree about some major issue? Mm-hmm. You can only do one of two things. You can either say, well, it doesn't really matter. Let's just have a hug and let's make up and let's just stay together because it's not that important. Or you say, no, actually, it is important. I'm right, you're wrong. We're going to go on our separate paths. And that's why we have tens of thousands of Protestant denominations.
Yeah.
Because this is the Protestant problem. There's no authority. There's no referee in the game. There's no one to say, actually, this is the proper interpretation. This is the truth. You must walk in it. And the Catholic Church had that. Not just the papacy, but the whole magisterium of the Catholic Church and an authority system in the Church, which I say is universal geographically and historically. In other words, this authority structure goes right back 2,000 years to our Lord, and we have 2,000 years' worth of Catholic teaching and Catholic understanding and Catholic wisdom to draw on, but we also have a geographical universality to this authority. In other words, in the Church of England, when they debated women's ordination, it was just concerned with the Church of England and what's happening in England. But the Catholic Church says, okay, what's happening in Germany? What's happening in Africa? What's happening in South America? What's happening in Asia? Mm-hmm. We can look at the entire Church geographically and draw that sense of authority from the whole Church, not just one geographical area or just one culture.
So you said it only affected England. Are there not Anglican churches in the United States that are under the purview of the Church of England, or is there a separation?
Well, the Anglican Church in America historically has been the Episcopal Church.
Oh, okay.
And the Episcopal Church follows the Anglican tradition. But in the Anglican structure, all of the different national churches are independent. So the Episcopal Church of the USA is an independent unit from the Church of England. The Church of Canada is an independent union. The Church of Nigeria is an independent union. All these different Anglican national churches are all independent. They do what they want. There's no central authority for any of them.
I was going to say this coincides with what you just said about authority. I mean, they wouldn't necessarily cross the pond with the authority, and if
right.
you want to have something that's Anglican-like, then you end up with like you said, the Episcopalians here in the United States.
And when you think about it, the fact that the Catholic Church has maintained this universal authority under one sort of administration is actually pretty astonishing and amazing that it's done so for 2,000 years. And it still maintains that same authority structure today. Now, sometimes we find that authority structure to be legalistic or overbearing, but in fact, it's the thing which attracted me to make me realize that these questions were above my pay grade. There was somebody else who was going to be able to make that decision.
So, aside from the papacy, in this authoritative feature of the Catholic Church, not found in the Anglican Church, what would you say is the second biggest thing that the Anglicans do not agree with, as far as the Catholic teachings? Is it Mary? Is there a big stumbling block?
You talk about the Anglicans as if they have a united belief system. They do. Okay.
Yeah.
They do not. In fact, there are three major streams of Anglicanism, and I discuss in some detail in my book, saying that there's evangelicals or low church, and their worship and their theology is basically Presbyterian.
Wow.
And then there's the Anglo-Catholics, whose theology is very sacramental and very Catholic in its understanding. And then there's the liberals, which are in between the two, who just maintain a kind of easy, comfortable modernism. And these three actually disagree very profoundly about the important matters of the faith. They would not agree on what a sacrament is. They would not agree on what the priesthood is. They would not agree on what the church is. They would not agree on what the scriptures are. And so you can't talk of Anglicanism in any kind of united way. I can remember when I was an Anglican, my dad once said, well, what do Anglicans believe about baptism? And I said, well, choose your Anglican.
Yeah.
Wow.
Okay, so, and that, if you ask me, what is the basic thing which drew me away from Anglicanism? And it was that kind of do-it-yourself, anything-goes mentality. And nowadays, that has gone to such an extreme that they also believe just about anything that you like about human sexuality. They're pushing for same-sex marriage in church. They have pretty much anything goes approach to human sexuality now.
Wow.
And also Christian theology. It's all over the place with New Age theology coming in and Eastern religions. And again, whatever works for you, man.
I would have thought that, there would have been some sort of authority figure, maybe under the king or the queen, and maybe that was my misunderstanding of the church. If they were at the head of the church, this type of division of these three different wings that you describe of the church wouldn't exist, but apparently they do.
No, the main thing is, and this is called latitudinarianism. Latitudinarianism is the heresy which basically says, doesn't matter what you believe as long as you stay together. No. And Saint John Henry Newman acknowledges within Protestantism, he said they fall either into the latitudinarian error or the sectarian error. The sectarian error sacrifices unity for doctrine, and the latitudinarian error sacrifices doctrine for unity. That's a bit of a mouthful, but basically what he's saying is the latitudinarian error is you can believe whatever you want as long as you stay on the boat. And the sectarian error is, no, truth is truth. We have to get out of the boat and paddle our own canoe.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. It's just tough to wrap your head around. I mean, when you look at it from a Catholic perspective, it's just tough to understand.
Yeah, and it's that confusion. It's interesting to me is also that I only was able to start writing after I became a Catholic. And that's because I had something to write about. I had something to get my teeth into.
Oh, yeah, sure.
In the Anglican Church, it was all so wishy-washy and so bland and formless that there was nothing really to write about.
Yeah, they'd all be opinion pieces, wouldn't they?
Yeah. And this is why the poor old Anglican Church is swayed about by every wind of doctrine. They basically adopt any sort of fashionable ideology, any sort of fashionable theology that's out there, and it's all over the place.
Mm-hmm. Father Dwight Longenecker is our guest on Faith with Reasons, and his book, There and Back Again, A Somewhat Religious Odyssey, available now from Ignatius Press, and of course at dwightlongenecker.com, which, as I mentioned, a wonderful website, and you can check out his podcast there and his blog posts. But I see that you now are doing some wonderful, online video courses. Is that a new venture for you?
No, I started doing this during the pandemic when people were stuck at home. Mm-hmm. So I was asked to do some of these online webinars. One, by the way, which is happening tonight over at the Catholic company, goodcatholic.com, on faith in the political age. And we began to do these online events, and that led me to then record some of those and put them up as video courses. Wonderful.
Well, as I mentioned before, it's a very, very impressive website. I think it's very, very well done. The content and everything is very accessible. It's quite impressive. You've got how many books out now? You're into 20 some?
Yeah, about 20 books or booklets of various topics on Catholic faith and culture. Mm-hmm.
And all of them are available at your website as well, or do you have
I think one or two of them have fallen out of print, but I have most of them available on my website.
Very good. Yeah, very good. Well, I encourage anybody that's listening to take a peek at the website if you haven't done so already. It's well worth a visit, and the content there is very, very impressive.
Well, thank you very much. I've been working hard on it, and we got good feedback, so people are very welcome to come and visit.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And I believe that last time you were on was about Immortal Combat, I want to say, or we at least talked about that. I know just one of the many books that you have available there. So, boy, thank you for all that you're doing. And obviously, you just keep plugging away there. You're keeping busy and running a busy parish and so forth. I don't know how much sleep you get, if any, but hopefully you get a power nap once in a while.
Everybody tells me to slow down, but then I get bored.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. Well, it kind of sounds, and in looking over the book and kind of tracing your history through all of this, that's always been a problem for you, hasn't it, Father?
Not really.
No, okay. It seems like you just keep plugging away there. And again, I guess if you want our listeners to take anything away as a kind of a teaser to get this book, what would you tell people as a good reason that you need to go out and get this book? Because
well, I think it actually relates some of the trials and difficulties. Although it's a humorous book and there's a lot of humor in it, it also relates not so much what I've done, but what God has done, and to give people hope that if they can't see what God's doing in their life, and there seems to be confusion, and you don't seem to have your prayers answered, hang in there. God plays a long game, and you'll eventually see how it all comes together.
Very good. Again, There and Back Again is the name of the book. Father Dwight Longenecker. And you can get this book at your favorite Catholic bookstore. You can get it online at Ignatius.com. It is available from Ignatius Press. And, of course, at DwightLongenecker.com. And make sure you sign up for his blog, Standing on My Head, his podcasts, and have access to as many books and articles and lectures and the online courses and so forth. Father, could we ask you as the show closes out here for your prayer and blessing?
Sure. May the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord make his face to shine upon you and give you his peace this day and always. In the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Thank you so much. Father Dwight Longenecker, thanks for joining us on Faith with Reason. Such a pleasure to have you on, and we're going to have to get you back on again real soon.
Okay, thanks so much. You guys have a great day.
Thank you.
And thanks for listening to Faith with Reasons today. Hopefully you'll join us again next week. We're going to be talking about the wonders of the Mass and the Eucharist with Sister Mary Ann Fatula. For Shayne Stanfield, I'm Ron Finn on Annunciation Radio.